Well, great. We do have some room up front, some chairs left over, packed house here. Thank you for making it. So we'd like to welcome you to our first in our 2026 series of panel discussions for the industry. We're glad you're here. We're glad you made it, and we're excited for our panelists today. For those that don't know me, my name is Kevin Scully. I'm an architect and a partner at Design Collaborative. I moved here from Indiana 4 years ago to start our office down here. Before that, I led our higher education panel, our higher education studio up in Indiana. And so this panel discussion today is kind of near and dear to my heart. I'm excited to have these guys here with us today. We've got three great rock stars with us today in the industry. A lot of knowledge, or like seniority or age in front of here.
Yeah, one of the three.
But also great leaders, and I think that's what we're here to hear from today is their leadership that they bring with them. Ensure that. I just want to thank each of you for taking the time to be with us today and share your knowledge and wisdom with us. So I'd like to introduce Nathan Woods. Nathan is from our Fort Wayne office. Nathan is an architect. He's a passionate architect, and he now leads our higher education studio up in Indiana, taking over my shoes and doing a great job. So appreciate him coming down for the panel discussion today and leading this discussion. Hopefully we'll set this up so these guys can all share some great wisdom with us, and I appreciate it. So Nathan, you're on.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin. For those who I haven't met, I'm Nathan Woods. I'm a partner and market leader at Design Collaborative. My favorite stat to share with everyone is in the studio in the higher education market, we've been able to, as of a couple of years ago, say that we've impacted the lives of over 1 million students across the country. So in no small part, thanks to Kevin's leadership before me, and it's really nice to be out here in the tropical Charlotte weather. Alan has me on a strict timeline to get everyone out before the snow on Saturday, and that's my main job. But in addition to that, really excited to have Owen, Kevin, and Patrick here with us today. So each of them bringing a different lens, facilities, finance, and operations. And all of them are leading institutions that are navigating a really complex moment in higher education really well, which you'll be hearing here in a second about. But maybe before we jump in, I'll ask each of you to share a little bit about yourself, your role, institution, and if you would, on the spot, something you're really looking forward to this year. Maybe in higher education and relevant to the topic, or if you've just got a really kick-butt vacation planned. Owen?
So Owen Cooks, Associate Vice Chancellor of Facilities at UNC Charlotte. I've been in the role about a year and 3-4 months or so, but my entire career has been facilities and higher ed at some different institutions. Was in North Carolina time before at Winston-Salem State, and did stints at Pitt as well as Purdue University. Something I'm looking forward to. So I find that when I go to trade conferences for owners like APA, SCUP, et cetera, I'm always amazed at the things I learn from the diversity of institutions that we have at those engagements. And our problems are more common and shared than we know, despite dividing lines of however you want to say it, big, small, private, public, or Pitt. I always used to joke, I would argue it was private when it suited me and public when it didn't. But that commonality of sort of the issues that we face and the challenges and the opportunities are something I really look forward to engaging with you all tonight.
Thanks. I'm Kevin Butler. I am currently the CFO and Vice President for Finance and Administration at Winthrop University. I have been in higher education my entire career, 42 years. Started when I was 12. And actually I started as a mechanic in the University of Arizona Motor Pool, 1983, so you can count those days. But I worked at 4 prestigious institutions in my career prior to retiring, and then I had an opportunity to come out here and do a 30-day to 90-day consulting gig, and I ended up becoming Winthrop's CFO. So I've retired unsuccessfully twice in my career, and so really excited about the work that's happening at Winthrop. Certainly has gone through some tumultuous times, and they're right on a great surge right now and doing some incredible stuff down. So happy to be a part of that. Looking forward to hopefully maybe retiring again in this calendar year. So let me know if you need like a security or a doorman or something, you know. But
Campus greeter.
So for 30 or 60 days, and then
apparently
head of security,
then I'll be your CFO. So we can go through that.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, Patrick Biggerstaff. I'm at Wingate University, probably the odd duck in this group, a private institution, small private institution. Worked at Wingate all my life. I actually graduated as an athletic trainer. Did a small stint with the Charlotte Eagles. If anybody remembers, Charlotte Eagles. We didn't win the national championship the 2 years I was there. Not my fault. But was an athletic trainer, certified trainer there, and our current president talked me into higher ed, and I think that's working out okay. So we'll see. That's right, it's too late now. So, but cut my teeth early on in higher ed as res life. I argue that anybody that does higher education should work in residence life at least for a year or two to really understand students and the good and the bad, if you would. If you make it, they will break it, sort of thing. Served in lots of different roles, planning officer, I did operations. I was the strategic finance officer for an institution and did a small stint as the interim CFO at the university, but have landed in operations now.
Anything you're excited about this year?
Anything I'm excited. I think times of tumultuous change. I think higher ed is in a crazy spot right now, and we are in a generational change. I think they'll be writing about this for higher ed in the history books this time, and I think Owen said it well. Despite our size and who we are, I think we have common issues and common solutions, and I think we're going to land on our feet. We've talked about this birth dearth and enrollment decline across the country in terms of graduating students from high school, and I'm excited. I think we're going to land on our feet and land in a way that is going to redefine higher ed in a way that is going to benefit students and U.S. higher education. Yeah. That's
perfect. And you hit on the exact note that I hope we have today, where one of the reasons I wanted to start with something positive is for anyone here who doesn't live in the world of higher education, it can be a little doom and gloom in the dialogue out there. So you hit on the so-called demographic cliff that we're in, I think, by most accounts. Mm-hmm. So I've got a few notes here on all the reasons why this is the worst. Demographic cliff, uncertainty around international student enrollment. We've got evolving student expectations, for sure. Pressure on public funding, rising costs, rapid changing in how learning is happening, even just in-person, online, hybrid, and dealing with that dynamic environment. And at the same time, campuses are being asked to do more than ever before. Not just being an academic center, but also a workforce engine, a community anchor, and I would say increasingly an economic development partner in the conversation. And so that's a lot to deal with all at once. So despite that environment, Owen, Kevin, Patrick, and their respective institutions are doing a lot to navigate these challenges and finding ways that I think we're going to touch on here to adapt and grow and thrive in this environment, not fighting the doom and gloom. So did I do okay framing that?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
That's fair.
So I think I want to start with a question to you, Patrick, where we were just talking before coming up here. And I think my question is this. So Wingate's mission is, and your strong healthcare programs are placing you right at the intersection of student experience and workforce demand. So how would you say the changing student expectations and regional workforce needs are influencing the way you're planning housing, academic spaces, shared campus spaces, and where are you looking to intentionally partner with other folks in the community?
I think that's a great question. You know, partnerships, I mean, higher ed has for a long time, you know, looked for partnerships and just having probably more relationships. At least, you know, what is our impact? We look at North Carolina in general. What's our niche? You know, we have the Davidsons, the Dukes, the Wake Forest, the UNC Charlottes that are all around us, and what are they doing? You know, Wingate in particular, we pride ourselves in healthcare. Some of our business programs, we've recently started some of these ag business. What does that look like immediately around us in terms of who is there? We have aerospace in Monroe. We also have healthcare. We have, again, on this side of the county, a lot of ag business. What does that look like? Aligning that with who our niche is. You know, we're very much an access program. We spend a lot of time about economic mobility. Come to Wingate, you're going to graduate, you're going to change. We have a lot of first-gen students. And so understanding where our students are and meeting them where they are, understanding where we want them, where the finish line is, right? Graduating with a degree that has purpose and gets them jobs, and then finding the partners that want to help us do that. Meet students where they are, but also ultimately land in a spot that is going to get them a job and change some of that generational impact that we're really looking for. And so how does that translate to space? You know, looking at partners that need space, that need, you know, we're doing a lot of town development right now, especially because of the bypass that comes through. If you've been down, it's really incredible. But we've got some access to land, and what does that look like in terms of partner investment? How does it impact facilities that we're designing on campus in terms of shared space, and how does it impact student access to that space and those relationships? It's sort of a dancing around, but I mean, we're really kind of looking at how space is more collaborative now than ever before, and those partnerships aren't just, you know, a sign on the wall, but real job development at the end of the day. And I mean, again, that's sort of ambiguous, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
Is that showing up in a similar way on your campuses, or any differences you're seeing?
I can talk a little bit about that because I see partnership in a number of different ways. And Patrick, I think the diversity of the partnerships that you talk about are consistent with what we're seeing here. We're looking at academic partners. We're looking at all sorts of things. Winthrop is an old campus, 1890 campus. You know, we don't want to talk about deferred maintenance in this space, but we have some. But we also have a lot of space, and we also have a lot of real property. So and the other element that I don't think we can deny is all of the in-migration that we're seeing down here, in terms of, you know, how if they're building high schools in your backyard, it's a good sign for you if you're in higher education. And so how do you make sure that you're integrated into that piece to help grow your institution? One of the things that we are seeing is that we have way too much space. And so one of my roles and thrust areas before I leave here is to see if we can get a plan to monetize all of those real property assets. The first thing that you have to do is you have to do an assessment of all of your space. So we're working with like Gordian Sightlines and things like that too, to figure out how to maximize your investment so that you can improve what you need, and then reduce your maintenance and your operating costs, maybe shutter some of that space or find partners that bring academic synergies onto your campus who can then rent those spaces. So I think it's redundant with what many of the things that Patrick says, but we're looking for things like that. I think one of the things that's really exciting at Winthrop is we just announced and were approved for a bachelor's degree in aviation management. Mm-hmm. And so we are partnering with a private ground school and flight school that's out at the Rock Hill Airport. And we're going to be doing the management aspects here on campus. And so that's kind of a unique sort of an opportunity. Again, I won't talk about the procurement process in South Carolina. Let's just say that it's intense. But being able to establish ourselves in that partnership and navigate those procurement obstacles was a challenge, but glad that we got home. So a lot of partnerships that we can talk about.
I left procurement off the list.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Good.
Can I shift the question just a little bit for you, Owen?
Yeah.
So UNCC continues to grow, I wrote, at a scale that brings opportunity and complexity. And so I'm just curious, how is that shaping the way you're thinking about the flexibility on campus, in the facilities even, so they can support everything from research to workforce training to community use without compromising your core student experience?
Yeah, it's a balance act for sure. So one comment to the demographic piece you brought up before, I do think when you parse the statistics, if you look at North and South Carolina, we're actually better than a cliff. And I think part of that is just looking at straight, high school graduates, but it's also all the influx of folks that are coming here, right? So it's not as bad for us, not that there's not some tail there, but we're in pretty good shape. So as we look at continuing to be who we are, because that's what got us here, and how do we scale up to be who we want to become, it is a delicate balance. And working on a campus as young as ours, right, 1947, and believe it or not, we have deferred maintenance even though we're that young. And that's a message my government relations person who came likes to make sure Raleigh hears loud and clear so we get our share. It does require some balance. And so, Charlotte started football and that was a new thing and that was necessary because of the scale up, right? So we're looking for what are the next things that promote scale and the preservations of traditions, even in a younger campus, that need to be maintained. So being a residential campus is still very important, but we have to, just because of our size, rely on the relationships we have with the private housing community around us and try and shape that as best we can. We certainly are in a space where, older models of put it on the list, eventually we'll get funding for it, here's your state money and go, just doesn't work anymore. And it's probably not coming back. And so to find opportunities where scale up opportunities or continuing mission opportunities have funding streams that we might not have considered in the past or underutilized in the past. And one of the turbulences that you were talking about earlier is, another sort of stable thing that was always there was F&A dollars out from research grants on the federal side. And of course that whole space has changed. And it's not that we were not focused on partnerships and other ways we might bring different colors of money to the table to build up, say, the research enterprise for our newly minted R1 status that we need to grow. But now we have to double down on that because it's critically important. And I think it's important to the Charlotte region. So, our rebrand of The Difference is Charlotte really says we have to go out and seek those partnerships with companies and collaborators that are aligned with our research. So one kind of example in the facilities space, you may be familiar with our portal building, which is mostly not us, right? It's all these outside companies, and they're working in the entrepreneur space, so it's College of Business opportunities, and they're doing research that supports some of the other colleges on campus. But they're very small spaces. There's a suite here and a suite here and a suite here, and some are big name companies you'd recognize in a small space, and some are these startups. So what we see as the next evolution of that on our West Campus is the development of more facilities, but at a greater scale. So we need a research building that has a floor of a big company and a floor of another company, and then maybe we take a floor that has, you know, those research touch points, and that's sort of what our vision is as to how we keep growing in that environment and in a way that supports the Charlotte region.
Kevin, I wanted to bounce back to something you had just touched on. I think you called it, or maybe I called it procurement challenges. So you've got that on maybe one hand, but then counterbalancing that, your big success with enrollment, with growth.
Sure.
And so as we're thinking about that and what Owen was, and sort of the framing that Owen was dealing with, thinking about community partnerships, on one side you had mentioned right-sizing the campus, and on the other, kind of leveraging those assets in new ways. I'm curious if you could share more.
Sure, I can expand a little bit on that. Of course, let me just shoot off on a little bit of a direction.
Sure.
Be careful what you wish for, because when you have the type of growth that we had at Winthrop. Now, I came from a little place called Nevada State University now. We built it from a college in 10 years, from 2,000 students to 8,000 students. So I understand growth a little bit. But an 8% growth in your freshman population, when you mandate by policy that your freshmen and your sophomore are going to stay on campus, and now you look at your rooms and you don't have the rooms, so you're leasing every room that you can, and so you have to look at policy and be very attentive to. Be careful what you wish for. It's a great problem to have when you have too many students, so that's always great. Talking specifically about what we're doing at Winthrop, and I think that this fits into where you're at. We have a lot of just vacant land that has tremendous potential to generate a secondary revenue stream for us. We had a 501c3 that was created a few years ago. I've repurposed that from a lands corporation that was looking at acquiring and building on new lands to helping us figure out what do we do with the property that we currently have. And when you look at the types of plans that you can do, there's two ways that you can do this. One is on the offense and one is on the defense, right? I know what I want. I want to build a hospital, right? Well, you can set out an RFP and you can solicit for that, okay? You might know what it is. I always like to say, well, what if somebody came and said, we want to build Disney Rock Hill? Okay, well, crap, we never thought about that before. What does that look like? But you need to have a checklist that says, okay, what do you want when these things come to you? Right. I want academic synergies. I want space that's flexible to perhaps partner in. We want internships. We want post-graduation employment for our students. So get your checklist ready so that you're able to assess that. Couple of different ways to deal with that, but you're probably going to end up in an RFP in South Carolina anyway. And so then you got to pack into that line and figure out where you're at. What I was able to do at Nevada State was the Board of Regents took a piece of our property and leased it to a corporation that I created out there so that we can then immediately enter into subleases at the pace of industry as opposed to the pace of higher education or the pace of state government. And I'm having conversations with the great people down in Columbia to see if there's any way that we can kind of crack that diamond down here. If we can, by meets and bounds, identify property that then we can move into some sort of a little less than a glacial pace to doing that. So I know that probably wasn't spot on, but I just wanted to share that in public higher education, there's more than just you and the environment. You've got to partner with the government. And so I get to go down tomorrow and beg for money. That'll be my other gift to the great state of South Carolina.
I think, just to build on what you're saying, as a private institution, we've got some town development significant because of the bypass, is what I mentioned, and we're able to help accelerate, be an accelerant to that process through, the county, the town, the state, that, they have their own procurement process, and because we don't follow that quite the same way, that we're able to leverage that in a different way, and we've moved forward some of these plans, and so we're looking forward to breaking ground in a way that I don't think most developers and planners thought that we were, and a lot of that is just those partnerships that we've made and been able to leverage our purchase power, our economic influence in the area to accelerate those sort of pieces, and I don't envy your procurement process at all. But it's different, and I think it's all manageable.
Yeah. I mean, we know why it's there.
Yeah, that's right.
And you just have to operate within those parameters. And
yeah.
So I'm not disparaging any of that. I'm just indicating that it does add a complexity to the process.
Starting to see why they made you stick around for more than 60 days.
That's right. Yeah.
You sure you're retiring this year?
I could be making all of this up.
I'm just an architect. I wouldn't know any better. Yeah. One thing I wanted to go to you with, Patrick, is I think from the outside looking in, it would be easy but maybe a bit naive to think that you're that dissimilar from UNCC. And the thing you just touched on that I wanted to follow up on with you is the community partnerships. And if I can find this here, so of course I can't. Let's just wing it. So as we look at your growth in the health sciences in particular, that comes with partnerships.
Yes.
And I'm just curious on everything from within those partnerships. How has that caused or influenced the way you're investing in your campus? Yeah.
That's a good question. Anybody that's doing healthcare, especially graduate programs like physical therapy, PA, pharmacy, clinicals are so critically important. Clinical sites with healthcare partners are just absolutely critical. And so as we're sitting down with our healthcare partner executives, we're talking about, hey, how do we ensure these? How do we secure these? How do we make sure that we have long-term relationships there? But what ends up coming back is, hey, we need nurses. We need these types of jobs. How can you guys support that? And so we're starting now to have more conversations about, all right, in order to do some of these particular regional job demands, you start to ask about, all right, what types of facilities do we need to do those and execute those? And then when you start having those conversations, they lead back to some of these clinicals. And all right, well, does that mean that we're going to add a urgent care because of the demand in the area? But in that urgent care, does that lead to clinicals? And so it starts to be this, you start to have this conversation that ultimately ends up in what are your facility needs and the capital investment that we need to make that both benefit the institution, the region, the community that's immediately at our feet, and then our students and those partners. And we're starting to really come up with more depth and breadth of partnership than just this like, oh yeah, Wingate and Atrium have this really great partnership. It's deep. It's becoming deeper than that, and it has to, because institutions in these, that we need each other in a way that we didn't before, and especially in the region. So how do we fill those jobs and how do we fill those spaces? And I think it's asking what our facilities need to be. We talk about the dreaded word deferred maintenance. I think for me, one of the things that we are really aligning across the institution are capital renewals. How do we take a look at spaces and say, we've got all this deferred maintenance. We need a new HVAC system. We have roofs and structures, and is it the right space? But are we aligning our growth needs in terms of new programs, new spaces, partnership needs, and coming in and saying, all right, how do we take care of this space, but then knock out this capital renewal at the same time? And we've had some success at that. And I think that's really where we start talking about, for private institution in particular, where we don't necessarily have state funding, how we knock out some of that capital renewal, but also move towards more strategic partnerships that we get a little bit of investment, we're investing in them, and it ultimately leads to the outcome that our students are getting jobs in those industries that benefit the community. It's that ecosystem, that circle that matters. A circle of, not life, that's not the right word, but
I think that's true.
Job development, yeah, that's really what it is.
I saw a lot of head nodding. Is that feeling similar?
Well, it is, and just in a different bit of a bent. In this day and age, universities used to self-op everything.
Yes.
Our bookstores, our
That's
food
right.
services, you name it, we did. And as you started to realize that you could really do a lot more when you get people that specialize in these areas. Now, Winthrop just recently outsourced the entirety of our facilities management company with a firm. And so while it's not a popular decision at the time that it was announced, but at the end of the day, it's the right decision. And even those individuals that were working in-house that have migrated over to that corporation, most of them feel very satisfied with that decision, and they're treated very well, and they're able to be part of the Winthrop family. But we're seeing this in areas that you never even thought of, right? Financial aid, people doing, verification and things like that. Private industry beat us to outsourcing our payroll, but I wish we would have thought about that, And there's all sorts of partnerships that expand to far beyond the built environment, the operational environment, to making us leaner, so that we can do our jobs better and hopefully create a better student experience, because that's what it's all about.
It was your comment that sent me down that path. But is
sorry.
this? No, thank you. Is that all resonating and feeling familiar?
Yeah, it is. I think the one thing I'll add to kind of talking deferred maintenance and things, we refreshed our master plan. Thankfully, the week I arrived, so I didn't have to lift a
Easy.
finger. I just sat in the board meeting and they approved it, and off we go.
Well, you can come up and help us.
Yeah, well, believe me, most other places it's me starting it and going through what I know, and some of my team is here tonight, had to go through to get through that. But I think a nice thing we did there, in the traditional sense, the master plan looked at deferred maintenance, calculated, facility condition index, and those numbers are there. But we also took a deep dive into sort of the other side of the coin, and that's facility suitability index. So it's great that I got a 50-year-old chemistry lab, and we've kept it up in great condition. It's still a 50-year-old chemistry lab. And so I think we're doing a better job, which is always something you have to keep lifting up at a large place, of connecting those dots for deferred maintenance and suitability, and making sure you're in sync with the vision of what needs to be touched next and what those priorities are, so we don't do silly things like rip out the ceiling and replace the HVAC and then come back a year later because they've decided this is now going to be a different use and that sort of thing. And so throwing light on putting those in tandem in the same document, I think, helps us plan smarter.
So I was just noticing the time here. So this is flying
We
by.
we started late. No, keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to see Alan starting to float over there and give me the get out of here. But as we do start to wrap up, first I do want to make sure to thank each of you for sharing not just the challenges, but the thoughtful and strategic ways that you and your institutions have been navigating those. And so one of the, I did have one last wrap-up question, and I want to change it a little bit. It was originally going to be, if you could go back to talk to your 2020 self, what would you say? And as we've been talking, I realize that's not why we've got you here. You've been the leaders, and you haven't been looking backwards, you've been looking forwards. So I think I want to shift that to say, what are you really looking forward to in the next 5 years in higher education as you picture what you will look like 5 years from now? What has you most excited? I didn't give you any prep on this, so I will let you jump in any order you feel ready.
I'll answer this. At least I'll take my. And I said this to Nate earlier. I feel like higher ed is getting away from this amenity sort of attraction that I hated. And we all chased it. Putt-putt courses and slides and climbing walls and all the silliness. And, I remember going and looking at plenty of those things and thinking, oh, that's really cool. But you never actually saw any students using those spaces in meaningful ways. And, I think public sentiment's asking a valid question: what's the value of higher education? And I think we are getting back to, especially as we talk about these partnerships, these corporate partnerships, and because they're asking us for help. It's not we're asking them for help. They're coming to us and asking us for help. And how do we meet that call? How do we meet that demand? And I think it gets back to the student. We have to meet students where they are. And I mean that you've got students that show up on your front step, and actually there's a lot of ways to come to college now, but they show up in many different places with many different readiness, right? Some kids they show up and they had perfect SATs, and some kids they never thought college was even an option, and are they ready? And so are we taking them where they are, and are we turning them into a workforce for the 21st century? And I think we're in this sort of rebranding and rebuilding our institutions in a way that is preparing certificate programs, not just majors, not just graduate schools. We're talking about getting kids out of college quicker. We're talking about gap years. I mean, all these different types of things. And so how do we, how do we set the institution from a sustainable standpoint, financially sustainable, but also facilities that are adaptable, flexible, that invite other people in and meet those student needs? And I think the next, not just 5 years, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to see some changes in institutions that I don't think we can imagine. I also think we're going to see we're going to lose some institutions that just can't adapt quick enough. And you said this, I think both of y'all did. Institutions are horrible at adaptability and flexibility in an urgent way. We just historically are, for lots of valid and legitimate reasons. But the institutions that can jump that hurdle are going to be the ones that not just survive but thrive. And so what makes me excited is I think in times of great disruption, in times of great unknown, it's such an opportunity for us to really redefine and reshape who we are. And I'm excited to be part of it.
Yeah, I'll build on that a little bit too. So as I think 5 years out from this time of a lot of disruption and change and things going on, what I really look forward to seeing is the rebranding of higher education from what it looks like today. So a lot of the polls you've seen, confidence in higher education and its utility and its use and worthiness, and now the numbers we track to look at majors that maybe aren't on the right scale in some folks' eyes in income, earnability, or whatever. So I look 5 years out, and I wonder how many of these partnership stories that we can tell about what we thought then. I mean, I think we earn that confidence back one story at a time. So, quick example, I was at a research facility of ours the other day touring a group around, and it's some incredible stuff. They're testing the longevity of lithium-ion batteries and what makes them fail at different temperatures and things. They've completely digitized a Ford F-150 truck so that they don't do crash dummies with vehicles anymore. It's all virtual. We've got autonomous vehicles that fly, float, dive, all these different things. Every one of those is a story. Every one of those offers a partnership. Every one of those offers an experience for our students to take and tell that story, and for us to be on that road to rebranding what higher education's value is to society.
So I mentioned that I get the pleasure of heading down to Columbia to speak to the Legislative House tomorrow and talk about Winthrop and to beg for money. One of the things that I'm asking for is a revolving fund, nominal amount, to be able to be more nimble in our ability to create new programs that are associated with all of the new industry that's coming in and requires the skilled labor. You mentioned micro-credentials. I mean, it can be anything from that to embedded weekend MBA programs on somebody's property. I mean, the flexibility, meeting them in their space is absolutely there, and partnering in that manner is important. The reason that I brought this up is that Winthrop over the next 2 years is rolling out 10 new academic programs, which is insane. Okay, I'll tell you a little something about an academic program. Okay, some of these programs, to get accredited, you have to hire the faculty member before you can even enroll, and maybe even a year in advance, right? So you've already got that capital outlay. They're very expensive to roll out. And then you might build in your freshman year, right? Or get a few transfer students to build that pipeline initially. But it's 3 to 5 years before you're even thinking about breaking even in that. So if you have a fund that you can roll out a new program until you break even in that program, and then you can start up your next program and start using that to evolve the programs that you have. Because yes, there are some baselines in chemistry and physics and biology that don't change. But in computer sciences, it changes every day, right? So you have to be able to adjust and work at that pace, closer to that pace of industry and aside from that pace of higher education. So getting that mindset in place. There was a proposal at my cabinet meeting, sorry, Sebastian, my provost, but love you. But he brought in a very solid proposal about a program that was struggling, and it made sense. But the question that I had, and I'll have it every time that somebody brings a new program, is I'm going to say, what is our selected excellence? Okay, because if you don't have selected excellence in your organization, you're going to have widespread mediocrity. Okay, so you have to know what your thrust areas and those are what's going to identify you as an institution. I was talking to a neighbor of mine, told him I worked at Winthrop. He said, "Oh, what a great institution!" And he heard about it from the knowledge of programs and people that attended Winthrop in the 80s and 90s, right? We have to have that recognition, and we have to know what we're known for, and then to be able to invest in that capacity. So as I look on the 5-year horizon for Winthrop, A, I'm not going to be there.
Something we're excited about.
B, I want to lay that foundation and that principle so that they do have that trajectory and they do have a CFO that supports this academic mission and this evolution, this continued growth and rise that you see in the investment. So that's what I'm excited about.
I think that's a perfect summary. From where we started, highlighting the uncertainty in higher education, I think one thing that I am really excited to hear the three of you talking about in different and also similar ways is just the momentum that your institutions and that you're seeing other institutions having, and the innovation, the depth of innovation in higher ed, I think is another takeaway that I've had today, where I don't think I could say back a lot of the numbers things you just shared with us, but the depth of thinking and creative thinking that's going into solving these problems at around all facets of the university. So I think what I'd like to do first is if we can have a round of applause thanking these three for their insights. And I'm going to be really excited to see what your name tag says next year when you're not retired. But we do have some time if there's any questions from the group here.
Amy Connors with Lancaster County Economic Development. So I guess I'm curious, so we have UNC Lancaster in our county. Great, and we love that we have that, but their focus is like nursing, and that is for economic development, something that we don't have to sell. What is something that you would like, if you had the opportunity to tell economic developers about your college, whatever it might be, to better connect?
I'll try to answer that. I think for a long time we were insular in the way we thought about our programs. You know, you're looking for ROIs and what's going to generate enrollment and those sort of pieces. And I think that's still important. I don't want to say that that's not. I think a lot of what Kevin's saying is right in terms of, you know, what's the words you choose? What academic program of excellence? Like, what's going to be our? Yeah. It's well said. I mean, I usually just say, "What's the ROI?" And immediately the faculty are like, "Rah!" You know.
I'm just a country boy.
That's right. That's right. I like it. I think what we've done, and our president has done a really good job on, is starting to ask people like you, what do you need? And I think coming and saying, hey, I mean, outright saying, this is what we're kind of need, like what we see what we need, and seeing how they respond. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I know we're trying to respond differently. You know, ag systems and ag business, I'm just going to be honest, there's not a lot of like ROI in that, but it directly. Indirectly, there's a lot. And so in terms of, it's not just dollars, but it's relationships, it's partnerships, it's lifting the community up in ways that they desperately need. And so I think we're starting to invest in those kind of ways. And I think it's a really interesting question. We have had to change our perspective. And you know, we've got some great leadership, but we're also got some experts that are sitting down and asking ourselves those hard questions, not just new programs, but how do our existing programs, if we just tweak it a little bit, does it start to support those regional communities? And honestly, institutions like us, and I would argue Lancaster, they're going to survive. We're going to have to answer that question and meet you halfway, if not further.
I just add.
Within the reciprocity, like I'm thinking for nursing and physical therapists, you know, is that because of our proximity so close?
Right.
How can that partnership work too, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I think the first question would be, what do you need, right? And listen, because and then get them connected with the right people on your campus, and that's what we do. And I mean, our president has only been there 3 years. He's phenomenal. He's the right person at the right time at that institution, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're out where we can connect with economic development entities, organizations, and we are in industry, and we're asking, what do you need? And if we can't do it, we're going to let them know that we can't do it. But we're going to have that. We're going to noodle on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's the what do you need turn the question.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I've got a question. So recently we saw Elon and Queens merge, right? So I'm curious if you, from your vantage point, is this going to be a growing trend? Smaller universities or just larger universities coming together to join forces?
I think they have to. The cost and the expense of an individual entity running their own ERP, running their own systems, and doing things, we at least have to figure out how we're going to enter into some sort of collaborative agreements to be able to cost share some of these things, short of a merger. You know, when Sweetbriar went under a couple of years ago, that was, I mean, they've resurged, they've come back, it certainly made institutions take a step back and understand where are we at. There's a number of things that can rip an institution apart. You know, Limestone was kind of was one of those issues. We're going to see, unfortunately, more institutions having to step aside, hopefully transition their students and work through. But we're going to see collaboratives in consortiums, maybe even in higher education. We're going to see partnerships between Research One land grants and regional comps, and those are things that right now we can't even talk to each other. But we're gonna see business collaboratives between those entities. We're already seeing them with community colleges, but that's just going to be another way that we define the pathway of higher education and try to stay in our lanes. And I think that's the way that higher ed as a whole will survive.
Agree.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see more of that on the horizon, and we're doing more of that. Okay, we're the lead university in a multi-university engagement. And, you know, we recognize the competition, right? So Chapel Hill has had an MBA program in Charlotte for a while. Wake Forest just started a medical school, South Winston, I guess. You know, those are competitive forces that we have to adapt with. Now, medical school, we don't, you know, okay, we don't compete, but donor relations and, you know, community and law, that, you know, is very real impact to us. And so as those shifts occur, we need to be ready.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
What about the procurement process is so frustrating? You don't really have to deal with it. But from the state perspective, I'm with the contractor, so we are involved in the procurement process from time to time.
Well, you know, I've worked in 4 different states, I will it's in South Carolina in particular, there are certain standards and everything's run through the state. So there's some delegation out to the smaller institutions. The larger institutions, Clemson and USC, have a little more flexibility than we do. It's not a frustration, it's that you get set back into a queue because they're not necessarily staffed well, or for that workload. Again, you know, this isn't disparaging. It's the state that it is. They're doing their due diligence. When you deal with public funds, you have to have that level of scrutiny, so we know why it's there. It's really an efficiency more than an effectiveness issue. Does that make sense? I will tell you. I told you that we had. Well, we had an RFP for this facilities. We ended up with an $8.1 million contract for a facility to outsource. So it took some time. We needed to do our due diligence. It took 9 months. So it's patience, and I'm not the most patient individual.
We may be doing one of those jobs.
But it's time linked to only an incremental increase in value, right? So you're assuring that taxpayer dollar is spent most efficiently as possible, and sometimes it's squeezing a nickel and it's costing you $50 to squeeze the nickel, right? State processes are just set up that here's the rules. And I think the other element of time for that, not always an even value trade for, you know, the assure you're getting the lowest price, is it's hard to have those thresholds change over time. So I was in a meeting with our state construction office in Raleigh yesterday, And we're finally getting movement to potentially increase the threshold between informal bidding, where I just call you up as a contractor, versus invite all the contractors and advertise it for 10 days and so on and so forth. And that standard hasn't been changed since 2007, and the proposed increment is, a small amount. If you actually ran the CCI, right, Construction Cost Index, from 2007 to today, it ought to be a huge leap, but that's
right.
That's not how state moves. And so
Wow.
we'll get an incremental gain again for a little better value, and it'll still take some time.
Sure. And we'll see. We are seeing things like job order costing and other
Yeah.
things like that that are coming in that start to create some efficiencies in capital improvement. Being able to work through multiple delivery techniques from CMAR and design build and things like that are certainly things that kind of speed up the process as well.
Procurement isn't an evil process.
No.
It's I think you said it's effectiveness versus efficiency. I mean, for us, we lean into the effectiveness because your procurement process can be used to be more effective in developing, especially these big complex projects.
Right.
I mean, it can be helpful in many ways, and it can help build better partnerships and stronger partnerships is when you're going through that process. But it's the efficiency piece that can be
Do you have time
frustrating.
for just one quick example? So I mentioned our bed shortage, and then I'm challenged to build a 400-bed facility as fast as I possibly can. Okay, thought about doing a third-party development. Many call them P3s. The procurement process for a P3 would have put me back a couple of years. We're doing a self-finance. We're going to build this first phase. We'll probably go out for a third-party development on a second phase once we get the approval and we get shovels in on this. But because of that influx, we got to get building. We got to get beds up. We're currently on a path to complete this in December of 27. So that's not bad for us doing ourselves, but it would add a significant time to go through that procurement process to get that third-party developer approved through the state process. Again, it's the vetting. We're still going through the Joint Bond Resolution Committee and the State Fiscal Finance Authority. Sorry, guys, I'm from a different state, but but we know the process. And again, a lot of it could also be, I'm coming from a foreign environment and I got to learn really quick what the rules are.
Yeah.
And so there's that adaptable. So it's on both sides.
Well, Kevin's body language over there is telling me we are out of time.
You have been creeping closer to the front.
So if we
Needs
could,
a break.
one more time, give a hand to our three panelists here.